Hey folks, figured I'd give y'all an update on what I've been up to in Empyrean Creative mode here lately. A couple things going on. First of which is there's a Anvil community challenge going on with Star Wars related themes, and this is my current work in progress submission. It is a Galactic Empire cruiser of some description. I'm borrowing some aesthetic values from things like the Harrower or the Gladiator Star Destroyer. Also, maybe some inspirations from the Arkwinds class, with like the abdomen look here, where it widens up at the midsection. A couple of values with that. Also, maybe some inspirations from the Raider class with these little hanging out bits, these panels or whatever. Yeah, it's come along quite nicely. I think it has a real good Star Wars vibe. Now this will operate as a shield tank. So up until this point, a lot of my builds have been pretty much exclusively maneuverability builds. Kayla's definitely being an example where the majority of that is kind of oriented around agility and stuff. However, you could use it as like a light cruiser with in excess of 100,000 shields. But this will be more oriented towards the player base that isn't interested in holding down the space bar and hitting Q and E and all that stuff. So it will have a good bit of shields. Right now it's sitting at 120,000 base. That's with 6 of the big shields. And I'll probably look at maybe extending the ship a little bit to accommodate for those last two. In addition to that, it does have a good durability profile where the forward section of the ship is designed to soak up a lot of damage. First, it's got decoys, and there is a good bit of armor that the player can place. Now, there is some default, but in addition to that, if the player wants to, they'll be able to fill out these sections of the ship in order to reinforce the rigidity of the build. Also, it has a good damage control system where if you keep the ship front towards the enemy, then if your shields go down, you start taking hits to the ship, then it's designed as such where the most expensive stuff is going to be at the back of the ship. So up until this point right here, you won't lose too many things of value, but once you get to this line here, this is where your extended cores are, your auxiliaries, quantums, and stuff like that. About this line would be fusion reactors and large shields and such. So, the good majority of this ship, no, looks like we just lost power on the Star Destroyer. So a good majority of this ship is able to take a pounding without losing valuable assets. As well, the thrusters, for the most part, are segmented. So should you run into a situation where you have to run and you start taking hits to the back, then the chain reaction should be mitigated to a large extent. They shouldn't have too much spillover damage. So let's take a look at the inside. See what we've got so far. The design is such that the hangar is going to be forward. Right, so real strong Star Wars theme going on. Working a lot of that presence to really sell the effect. I'm looking at like a vertical mount here for like a TIE Fighter, TIE Advanced, or whatever. So this is kind of a prop right now, but this will eventually be a release. This ship here, the TIE Advanced, intended to be a starter vessel. And so I'm working on some sort of vertical mount to where we'll be able to make the most of this space. Park this up at the top, and then this opens up the bottom deck for additional HVs or SVs or whatever. So working out some of the themes of the interior at the moment. Some hallway production here. Throwing in a variety of themes throughout the ship. This is one of them. It's still kind of a work in progress, but doesn't look too bad. At first I wasn't going to implement some farms, but I did decide to throw in some because I had some open space. So I should have 4 9 plots. So not the biggest thing, but some sustenance there. A little bit of RP value going on right here. This is like a artillery control room. This little pocket of turrets and such, a nice little cluster. So I figured I'd make some sort of RP element going on here, where, you know, maybe the player, or I guess NPCs or whatever, would be coordinating artillery fire from this position. So just little things to spice it up. Another thing that was requested, which shouldn't apply to this ship, really, it was a Death Star thing, but the trash compactor scene from Star Wars movies, that got implemented here, so it looks pretty good too. You got the little antenna here, which was the device clogging up the compactor, so yeah, it's, you know, it adds some flavor, so it's whatever. It's not too bad. So now this I have to restructure the walk-in because I had to resize the ship and I just didn't reset it. But this is the lead into the central spine. So we'll be starting out with the small shields. And then we're going to transition into like the Core 9 CPU stuff. That's after that. Then after that, we advance to the medium-sized shields. And then once we get to the back here, then we start looking at our extended core stuff. So it's designed as such that, you know, as you progress, more expensive stuff will start turning up towards the back end of the ship. So, you know, if you get yourself in a situation where you lose your shields and you're trying to disengage, then if the enemy starts eating into your ship, it's, you know, the least valuable stuff's going to be towards the front. So a good bit of forethought into designing around that concept. Then of course we have, in addition to the front hangar receiving area, we do have some top ones, so should be able to fit some SVs in there. So now this will feature, again, 6 of the large shield capacitors and chargers, and configuration of those. I will perhaps look at extending that to get the full 8. Also, it's seating 2 fusion reactors at the moment. Could possibly do 3. So one of the features I like about the fusion reactors is that it has innate shield recharge. So that's what I was considering putting in the 3rd one. I didn't really need it for the power output, but should I incorporate that, that will help out with the shield value of the system. So one of the other features that it's going to have is like some walk-in thruster housings where you'll be able to access the thruster devices. So this is a look of that so far. Pretty good look. I like the framing that I was able to come up with here. That's a pretty cool look. I've never done that configuration before, and just was playing around and ended up texturing it. It looks pretty good. So nice little switch up to some texture themes here. So again, like all the components should be accessible, all the thrusters and some of the fuel tanks here. And if not directly accessible, then at least you'll have a look at them. Should you want to take the windows off, then you could directly access them. Some things like this give you direct access. So potentially looking at end of month release for this ideal scenario. Now as far as the firepower, it should have a considerable amount. You know, you can imagine um, a good bit here with these clusters, these placements here. And then if you wanted to, you can add some more along this bit. You get placements here. And I'll be working to incorporate some more positions. So, yeah, should be pretty formidable ship. So the next thing I have going on is a frigate for the Phoenix Starworks line. I guess you could look at this as the next step away from the Minotaur. So the target here is like a 2.1 million spawn in, and a good bit of nose armor. That's going to be a feature. So this should be like all combat or Xeno, and there's going to be some decoys in there. It will be a better shield value as in comparison to the Minotaur. So it should feel like a natural progression. Kind of a work in progress at the moment. There was some discussion with a person about trying to incorporate some, well, at least one fusion core, which I kind of agree with that sentiment. So it will need a little bit of restructuring because right now I have placement for 2 advanced and could expand to additional ones on either side here. So, and that's okay, but I think I would, would rather prefer it at some point find some way to place 1 fusion. And then maybe even find a way to slot in perhaps at least 2 of the bigger shield generators. I think I showed this before, but this is just to give an update on what's going on. So like this hangar receiving area is seeing a little more love. Placements have been done for the shield and warp and such. This bit here I still haven't revised, but I'm looking at probably changing the configuration here to widen this a little bit. So rather than just have the shield charger coupling, in the case of vanilla players, they could probably take those out and opt to put in some farms. So this is a somewhat of a copy paste from the Drake's Bridge, incorporated and I've kind of given it its own individual theme. Trying to transition that away from the Drake's look because I don't want to necessarily steal from that. But yeah, work in progress. It's still going under a lot of shaping iterations with this front section and this underhousing for this faux thruster. This bit's gone through some design implementation, so still a good bit of ways to go, but for the most part, in essence, the ship is there. A frigate that would spawn in at 2.1 million, being pretty frugal on the CPU, using advanced thrusters over drives. However, there will be the opportunity to upgrade those, but I'd like to keep that cheap so that way the player could get up and running with a build that could farm for cores. And rather than spending the money in thrusters, they could change that towards guns. So another thing I got going on is I'm looking at some point having a Dreadnought for the Phoenix Starworks lineup. And I'm doing a couple iterations here that I'm working through, trying to come up with some decisions. So these guys here, they're fairly big. Maybe this would be a proper Dreadnought class. And then this one here could potentially just be a battleship. So you could go, say, the frigate I showed, and then this next step up, this would be the Drake, which is a cruiser. And then perhaps we could say that this is a battleship. and maybe after that, one of these two would be, you know, an actual proper Dreadnought, but still trying to work through that. And I'm not completely certain if I'm sold on this form, but it does look good. Yeah, it kind of looks like a natural progression of the spirit of the Phoenix Starworks line, so it's there. It's not too bad looking. I think I like it. And so I guess after that, another thing is there's been some discussion about, you know, people wanting a starter base for the Phoenix Starworks line. I did have something that I made prior, like a year and a half ago, and I'd have to go through and retouch that up. But so that's a thing I'd look at doing later on, and I'm not sure if I'd want to incorporate solar with that or not, or just make that something that would be an addition that the player could attach. Because the issue is, you know, trying to with putting down a base with a wide footprint is trying to get all the terrain to work out in favor of the base placement. So I was thinking maybe doing like some sort of thin tower, and then just making some sort of requirement linked in a workshop where the player could place prefab setups of solar or something to that effect. So lastly, what I'm looking at here is probably this week I'll get a release up for a starter HV, and I'm not quite decided on what I want to do with that. It might be one of these three here. Essentially, you could look at these as motorbike replacements. They're fairly cheap, low cost spawn in. I'm like level 5, I might have to look at getting that down to level 3. But something that's cheap, you know, pretty disposable, could have in your back pocket in case of emergencies. So you could just leave it in your blueprint factory. You know, something happens and you need some wheels. There it is. Also, this here, which would be a proper starter HV. So this might be what I'm going to go with for the week's release. Just undecided on that. So one of the things that's going on with it, though, is the open cockpit. So I like the aesthetic value of it with like the roll bars and stuff, but I don't know if that would necessarily be a hit, being that it's exposed. Some people might want to prefer like a closed cockpit for their starter HV, but it's got a lot of the bells and whistles. I think it's what, yeah, 4K and then 1500 for ammo. Yeah, that's pretty decent for a starter. You get a constructor, you got your armor locker there, fridge, O2 station, and then probably here I'll have some placement for turrets. So I could work something out here where you put a harvester. So, you know, pretty cool looking build. Gonna have some decent utility. Just you know, maybe you can give me some thoughts on that in the comments below if you would like to see this released, or maybe some other form. But yeah, that's about what I got going on so far. I'm just trying to think if I have something else to show. I guess I could show you what the old base is. So yeah, so this is an older format, but you know, again, here the issue is with the footprint. That's something of a challenge for a start-in base. So, you know, I was thinking maybe something, you know, to the effect of like some sort of tower, you know, maybe one fraction of this here, and it's a vertical build, just enough to accommodate a couple farms, maybe a landing pad on top. And then later the player could attach solar and stuff if they wanted to do that, because this is, you know, it's, now I could do something like, you know, vertical drop the blocks down so that it's easier to get that placement, but it would probably just be easier to build a slim tower and stack all the function in there going vertically. So yeah, that's what I got so far, and really look forward to getting that Imperial Cruiser release. So it's I'm really chilling on that build. It's pretty cool. All right, folks, that's gonna do it for this work in progress showcase update. If you'd like to stay informed about these builds and many others to come, please make sure to subscribe and also like, as this helps the channel grow. Also, if you enjoy my content, please consider joining my Patreon, as your gratitude goes a long way to instilling passion into my endeavors. Link in the pinned comment below. Thank you, folks. LyfeForce out.